Welcome to the Science of Parenting podcast, where we connect you with research based information that fits your family. We'll talk about the realities of being a parent and how research can help guide our parenting decisions. I'm Mackenzie Johnson, parent of two littles with their own quirks, and I'm a parenting educator.
And I'm Lori Cordles, parent of three in two different life stages. Two are launched and one is in high school. And I am also a parenting educator. And today, here we are in season 6,
Yeah.
already midway through our season, past midway. And our
Yeah.
episode today is on how rules can help us build resilience in tough times.
Mm, sure is. And we've been talking about resilience all season, right? And parenting through tough times. We kind of defined it, and then we've been looking at some tools, right? Some strategies. And we really focused on that research based information and the practical strategies we can use in our lives when things are tough. And we know that every family's situation is different, all kinds of factors that contribute to our unique situations and the tough times we experience and how those are different, or even if there's similar tough times, but the way we experience them is different. So because we know that everybody is handling it in their own way, we really focused on those research-based kind of universal broad strategies that can help us parent through whatever tough times come our way.
We do. And the idea of parenting in tough times really comes down to how do I continue to be that parent that I want to be? And especially when things are tough. And so in season 4, we looked at the research based parenting model that encouraged us to be consistent and effective and active and attentive. And all of these strategies this season are going to come back to these concepts of parenting. We
For
know
sure.
everyone's parenting journey won't always be easy, but we do hope that we can fill your toolbox for those tough times.
Oh, for sure. And so this feels a little silly to define. That's where I usually like to start an episode.
I know. Yeah.
But it's like rules, like, come on. We know
Yes.
this word. But I did think it was interesting. So in this article, we've kind of been looking at repeatedly through the season from Prime, Wade, and Brown, looking at parenting in the pandemic. They were talking about rules and how they changed during the pandemic. But I liked how they broke it down.
Mm.
So they told us that rules might refer to unspoken emotional and relational patterns that govern our interactions in our family. So to me, that was like the word that stood out was there's some unspoken patterns
Mhm.
that help govern our interactions, like an implicit family rule that we don't talk about emotions. Like, nah, nah, like we're not going to talk about conflict. Shush it down.
Mhm.
Right? So
Mhm.
that can be an unspoken. So there's unspoken rules, or there can be explicit ones. Like they said, it might literally refer to limits on the standards of behavior for purposes of family socialization. And I also like, why haven't I said standards of behavior before? Because
Yeah.
that is a cool sounding phrase.
Right?
I
Yes.
like that. But yeah, so it can be unspoken, right? Implicit, or it might be the literal, right? The kind of the rules we tend to think of like the rule is this.
Yes.
Might refer to those limits on the standards of behavior.
Standards of behavior. I like that. Sounds
Yeah,
so formal.
unspoken or spoken.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, then what are some rules and expectations that you have for your family right now?
Mm. Well, one, I like that you use the word expectations. That's the word I tend to gravitate to. When I'm talking
Yes.
about rules, I don't know, I just prefer to say expectations. Okay, anyway, um, some rules that our family has, I feel like the one I spend all day saying is, like, use nice touches, like, use gentle touches, because I have a toddler and a preschooler. So that's one rule. Um, one is that this might be implicit. Maybe sometimes I say it out loud, but like not yelling at each other. Like when we
Mm,
disagree, we can disagree, but like we need to talk nice. Maybe that's the rules. Talk nice.
talk nice.
Yeah. But one that might be a little more specific to our family that I use as like the go-to foundational rule for everything is like you're in charge of your body.
Mm,
Um, and so that relates to like other people are in charge of their own bodies. So like we don't need to be telling people what they can and can't do with their body. We don't need to be commenting on other people's bodies. Um, we like you need to ask someone before you would like hug them or touch them, even in a nice way.
mhm,
Like so, and then also yeah, you can control your behavior. Like, yes, it might be hard, but like you are in charge of your body. So that's
Mhm.
like a family rule that we use a lot. What about you? What are some of your family
And
rules and
I think
expectations?
I know I've heard you remind Millie or your daughter of that, right? It just you're in charge of your own body and she's in charge of hers. So it's okay that she chooses to do that in the play. I can just
Yeah.
vividly remember a conversation you were having with her. Yes.
Yes, like, that's okay, she's in charge of her body. Like
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So I think that rules and expectations from my family right now, I mean, just in general, a big general rule of thumb in our family is always we will respect. We will have
Mm.
respect for each other. We will have respect for others. That means you speak respectfully to them, your actions show respect, and not in a so formal kind of way.
Like,
You like,
respect
but
your
just
elders.
yeah, but just that idea of I will speak to you respectfully as an adult and you will speak to me respectfully. We'll have respectful conversations. We won't lose our cool and, be so out of control when we disagree that, it's all about respect.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, that is definitely that's my go-to. And I know I've talked
Mhm.
about it before. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think of, like, there are some family rules that are, like, non-negotiable. Like,
Yes.
and so that idea of, like, respect, like, non-negotiable. The
Yes.
idea for me, yeah, like, no, you are in charge of your body. Like, they are not in charge of it. I even sometimes, like, tease my husband. I shouldn't even say tease, like, scold, probably, scold my co-parent of, like, she's asking you to stop. You need to listen to her because she's in charge of her body. Like, even
Mhm.
playful things like tickling or like carrying them up the steps or
Mhm.
and so we remind each other and as a family that some of those rules are non-negotiable. But I also think it's important to like talk about some of those rules that are negotiable, right? Like some
Absolutely.
rules are like situational. Like
Yes.
I even think of I think I've mentioned before, my younger sister lives with us. She's kind of transitioning into the adult world. And so
Mhm.
on her way into that transition, she's living with us for a while. And I think of like the quote unquote rules or expectations when she first moved in and now like they look a little different.
Mhm.
Like now, like if you'd like to have somebody over, our current expectation is like let us know before you'd like have your significant other over or ask a friend to come over.
Yes.
Like confirm that with us. Like, but yeah, that could be different in 3 months or in after she moves out or so there are like situational rules too, right?
Absolutely. That makes me think of so my middle daughter's just transitioned home as well. She's an
Yeah.
emerging adult. I launched her. She's hanging out with us for a while, and sometimes she'll walk through the living room and out the door, and I'll be like, "Where, where is she going?" And so I'm thinking right now, like her and I just need to have a conversation that.
Mm.
Even though she may have told me hours ago what her plans
Mm.
were, that just, walking through the living room and saying goodbye, I'm headed to this and such a place. Remember? I mean, that's kind of situational, right?
Yes.
Where before, I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe she didn't have to because like I knew her schedule because I was in charge of it. But
Yes.
now she's an emerging adult and I don't know, her schedule changes.
Yes. And, like
So
but
it's
that there's
different.
yeah, there's that space for negotiation, like, some things do not change,
Yes.
but some can, like, some are gonna be situational, for sure.
Mhm. Yes.
So I do wanna talk a little bit about the research about why rules are important. Now, I do think of, like, sometimes the flippant response
Mm,
of like, well, if people these days just had rules for their kids.
mhm.
And so I don't like, I'm like, that is not where this is coming from. We
Correct.
do benefit from consistency and structure, and our kids benefit from having appropriate expectations, right? We talked about that in our parenting styles episodes.
Mhm.
In season one, that like kids need our authoritative parenting style from Dr. Diana Baumrind says they need responsiveness and they need appropriate expectations. So
Mhm.
this is a part of that effective parenting. But Dr. Lang, who's an Iowa State professor, who you heard us talk a lot about in season 5, gave us access to her book
Mhm.
online called Parenting in Diverse Contexts. And she gives us some insight on why rules are important. She says children and people of all ages, adults too, thrive in flexibly structured environments. For children, the sense of knowing what to expect typically elicits feelings of safety and security.
Mm.
And caregivers can help reduce feelings of chaos by providing flexible but consistent. I want to like put that phrase in
Yes.
brackets in your head. We're going to come back to that. Flexible but consistent. And so she says three things we can do to be flexible and consistent to give security. We can offer flexible but consistent routines, flexible but consistent rules. And then I think the third one really goes right along with it. The third one is concrete and explicit directions with easy to understand expectations.
I like
So
this. I
I
like
think
those
the
a lot.
rules, right? We talked about routines last week. We're talking
Mhm.
about rules this week. And right alongside that is this idea of concrete, explicit directions with easy to understand expectations.
And the key point being that those things reduce feelings of chaos in children.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, if there
The
was a way to
boundaries
reduce
are a good thing.
feelings of chaos, right? Yes, boundaries. Yes, I love that.
Yes. Yes.
And then she also says that research shows that children's abilities to anticipate change, to use appropriate behaviors, and develop independence are actually fostered by warm, safe, stable, nurturing, compassionate caregiving that
Yes.
happens on a consistent basis. So, all of these things that we want, appropriate behaviors, developing independence, I mean, like we can create that by having flexible, structured rules,
Yes.
directions, expectations, and then this idea of consequences that can be responded to or applied every time in this warm, nurturing, consistent manner.
Okay. And like pause, tiny
Yes.
caveat for those inevitable times when it's not every time,
Yes.
right? That it's not every time that we're warm. Next week, we're going to talk about those.
Yes.
Next week, we're going to talk about those times when we didn't get it, quote unquote, right, that we weren't warm and nurturing when we delivered it. But for now, for this week, we're
Yes.
going to talk about the value, right? It's valuable to have those warm interactions with concrete, explicit, stable, safe, nurturing, caring, compassionate
All those
consistency.
words. Yes. So, okay, well, then amongst all those words and phrases, what stands out to you about these thoughts on rules?
The thing that I feel like I pull from all of it is which is actually something I've heard lots of other places, one being you. When you talk, I know you've really explored some of Brene Brown, who is a researcher on shame and vulnerability. She's got podcasts, books, all kinds of great stuff. But I've heard you quote something she says about clear is kind.
Mhm.
That like
It is.
being explicit and direct of what exactly we expect of our kids is kind. It gives them security. It helps, right? It helps with those behaviors being the behaviors we desire. When we can say explicitly, this is what I want you to do, that clarity is a good thing. Like that helps us and our kids when it comes to rules and expectations.
Absolutely. Like, they can
Mhm.
see it in their head when you are clear, like, "Oh,
Yes.
oh, she wants me
Yes.
to do this. I can see it
Yes.
in my head. I have a memory of it." Mhm,
Yes. Well, and we even talk about that in our Strengthening Families program for parents and youth 10 to 14, which is a face to face program that you can participate in. That was written and is coordinated by Iowa State University Extension. But we talk about like making your position on like certain substances and on risky behaviors and things like that, making them very clear with your teen. Like, what exactly do we
mhm.
expect from you around this? Like, and so being really clear is like that clear communication is kind.
It is kind. It
Mhm.
is.
What about you? What do you think of, we talked about a lot of the benefits, a lot of caring, consistent, nurturing, a lot of those words. As you hear all that, what like stands out for you about rules?
Well, and I love, Dr. Lang's book, especially the way that we utilize it, across the ages and stages,
Mm,
and that makes me think of this idea of, okay, let's take my family rule of respect.
yeah.
I can take that rule and find a way to apply, acknowledge that it has to happen, expect this rule across all types of environments. Same rule, At
Yes.
home, same rule at relatives' house, same rule at the park, same rule at the store. There isn't a place or time that I don't expect my children to speak respectfully to me, and vice versa. There isn't a time or place where I don't expect myself to speak respectfully to them.
Yes, they can
That's
expect
just
that
the
of
rule.
you. Yes.
Absolutely. And so it's the same general rule across all of these environments, and it allows me to be nurturing and warm and consistent. So the environment is flexible, but there's still that structure, and my children know and have always known that this is expected of me, and it's very clear.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So good. And I think each of us have kind of a different perspective on what are the non-negotiable rules in our home and in our family, but also that like yeah, every situation is different too. Like so it makes sense that we each do our own thing with that. Like there's not one set of family rules that everybody would be like this is it. We all agree. Every family in the world must agree to this. Like no. That like we know culture is a part of this too. Like
Yes.
what are the non-negotiables and things. So for
Yes.
sure.
And again, remember, like, I don't get it perfect. So next week, you're gonna hear me, share when are those times I maybe wasn't warm and consistent, and how do I repair from there? But we understand that rules are important. How does this specifically relate to parenting in tough times?
Yeah.
Well, Prime, Wade, and Brown used the pandemic as an example. And then what they did was they explained it this way. So as caregivers, we are simultaneously experiencing this pressure of what's happening in this tough time with renegotiating rules.
Mm,
So we have to renegotiate a rule because of what's happening in this tough time. So we've had to renegotiate some of our family rules in the last 18 months. And the idea is that it's possible some of that renegotiation might continue forward.
yeah.
Or we acknowledge that this is a different place and time, and we are going to go back to that rule.
Yes. Absolutely. And I think the thing that stands out for me from that about like we are both sometimes forced to renegotiate
Mhm.
like and it can be a strategy we choose. And
Yes.
so like I almost feel like I need to like sit in that in a pause for a minute like renegotiating rules is something that can feel really stressful to be forced to do and it can be something we can choose to do. Like okay, we can renegotiate. And I think of like when circumstances change, like new
Mhm.
circumstances sometimes force us to change those expectations. Even in regular life, we talked, there are some non negotiable rules like respect, but like the specific rules of, I think of like school age kids and the rules they have to adhere to at lunchtime because you
Yes.
only get 15 minutes to eat, like, or
Yes.
whatever, or even the rules at breakfast in our house versus at supper. Cause sorry, like, probably not going to see me at breakfast in my house.
Yes.
um, but so we do. And even I think of like the rules we adhere to in our living room as adults versus if we're at a friend's house. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna put my feet up on the couch in my house. Like, oh, is
Yes.
that a rule other places?
Is that a rule?
But so we know like we can allow for flexibility in our rules and our expectations and that they can shift with our circumstances. And so this is like, hey, universal permission from the Science of Parenting team that you're able to offer that grace and that flexibility. You're allowed to renegotiate during tough times when the circumstances change, whether permanently or temporarily. Like you
Absolutely.
can change your expectations and rules too. Like it's allowed.
Absolutely. And I love the idea then of thinking about renegotiation as a
Mm.
strength. It's a
Yes.
strategy. It is a tool for your toolbox. Tuck that in there. It's
Yes.
okay. And you can tap into renegotiation as a tried, true, tested, research based strategy. You can.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so what is a rule that you've renegotiated? We've been talking about the pandemic off and on. Like, what is a rule that's been renegotiated in your home because of the pandemic or during the pandemic?
So we shared this episode with each other a little bit in our thoughts and ideas, and I was struggling to come up with a rule that was renegotiated because my children are older, right?
Mhm.
During the pandemic, one was finishing her college, another one, was working. And
Mhm.
then I realized that I kind of have this rule of when you want to go hang out with friends and drive and you're able to drive and you want to spend money that way, you need to have a way to make that money. So
Mm.
honestly, the rule in our house has been like when you want to spend money, that means you have to have a part time job as a teenager. And so
Yes.
that's like a rule. Even my
Yeah.
special
Is
needs
it
daughter,
unspoken?
it is
It was it
it
kind
it
of?
it was unspoken until it was challenged. I'm like, "No,
Oh,
that's
and
a
it's like,
rule." Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. That makes
No,
sense.
you need to. So
Mhm.
even my daughter with special needs, like, she did some volunteering.
Mhm.
And so then I thought, "Oh my goodness, we totally renegotiated that rule during the pandemic for my 16-year-old." And that was essentially because she created a small circle, a small bubble of people that, we were allowed to, interact with, etc.
Yeah.
And the safety measures at her job were compatible for a while. And then as the pandemic went on, the safety measures kind of became incompatible with what my
Mm.
family needed or desired.
Yes.
Just based on our own family dynamics, health situations, etc. And so I had to renegotiate that idea of a part-time job because it wasn't really working for what we wanted in terms of our own family, health situation, etcetera.
Yes.
She didn't have to have a job. And
Yeah.
I had to really come around to, oh gosh, like, she's breaking the rule that I made her sisters adhere to. Well,
Yeah.
is this gonna be family, contentiousness down years down the road when they're in their 30s and 40s? "Oh, yeah,
Ugh.
remember? She didn't have to have a job." We
This is the one that'll keep coming up.
exactly. And we renegotiated, and guess what? Now she has a job again. But it
Mhm.
was, it was we really had to look at what works for our family in this situation right now.
Oh, yeah. You did, you, like, renegotiated to the circumstances at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah. For me, I think of the actually, it's not even like, if I think about it, it's like, no, 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 I know it. I know which
Yeah.
one. Um, in our house, it was definitely screen time for my preschool age child and honestly for my toddler, which
Yes.
when my daughter was a toddler and she's older, like I was like, "Ugh, screen time. No. I like felt really strongly about that. And that's neither like good nor bad, like here nor there. We're not going to add any shame or judgment to that.
Mhm.
Um, but during the pandemic and our 4 rounds of quarantine where my co-parent and I are both working in the home. Yeah, 4. Like we're both working from home and no childcare and no school and we had this totally new set of circumstances. And yep, the reality was like we needed like a gap plan, like a family
Mhm.
gap plan and screen time was it for our
Yes.
preschooler for a lot of the time. And so even, like, before my daughter now, I even shared it last episode. I think I've shared it that a lot of times my daughter will, like, get herself up in the morning, get herself dressed, go downstairs, and she, like, will eat some breakfast and grab some breakfast and watch some TV, which, we have some parameters on we can continue to do this as long as these things continue to work, but that was not a pre-pandemic thing. Like, that
Yes.
was not a thing that we did and so we shifted our expectations. Screen time was a tool that we use intentionally and currently use intentionally. And yeah, it was like a during the pandemic, this is what we needed to do to get by. And now we're kind of coming post pandemic and it's staying around. Like
Mhm.
that flexibility that we renegotiated some of those things around screen time in our house. And it's like, you know what? And we can be okay with that. Like if
Yeah.
we feel it comes to a place that it's a problem for us, we can renegotiate again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
I love that.
Yeah. So this kind of brings us to our section we like to call your reality. It's like, all right, told us about rules, why they're important, yada yada. What are we gonna do about that?
Oh boy. Yes.
um, so Dr. Diana Lang does tell us that specific, warm, concrete, understandable directions and expectations do improve behavior, prevent dangerous situations, reduce frustration. Heyo, here for that to reduce my
All the
frustrations.
alls.
Yep.
Exactly.
And that it can foster our kids' learning of appropriate behaviors. And this is the like, I underlined it in my script. It is most effective to tell our kids exactly what behaviors we desire. So
Clear
that is
time.
my super concrete was like, what is the practical strategy about rules and renegotiating? We're going to be really clear and explicit
Mhm.
about what we do want them to do.
Yes. That's one of
Mhm.
my favorite things to watch over the years as, I've done parenting education is giving parents examples, and I think we should run through some examples of, what the reality is sometimes we
Mm,
say, and then how
yes.
can how can we flip that to be very clear and
Can
kind?
can I be feisty? Can I be the
Oh,
feisty one?
yes. Okay, yes. Yes, you be the feisty one. Alright,
Okay,
let's
and by feisty, I mean in the middle of a challenging moment,
Mhm.
before I've had the I shouldn't say had the chance because I always have the chance. Before I have taken the time to stop, breathe, talk,
Yes.
I might say something like, "Ah, no hitting. Stop hitting." How could we
Mm.
flip that to what we do want them to
And
do?
I might flip that, and I might say to the child, "We need to use gentle touches. We need to
Mm,
use gentle touches with our hands." And let me be very clear and kind that we don't have to be syrupy and
mm,
we can be warm and direct. We don't
yeah,
we don't have to say, "Oh, I would love it if you would use gentle touches." No, you know what? It's okay to say, "I need you to use gentle touches."
yep.
Clear as kind and
Clear as
warm.
kind. Yes. Alright, what about I know you've talked about this before, stop it syndrome. Stop it, knock it off, right?
Yes.
Guilty of
Yes.
that. Stop,
Yes.
stop it.
Because what is it you want me to do?
Yeah.
I have no idea. What does stop it mean? Well, actually, in this certain circumstance, it means I need you to have both feet on the floor. I need you to use your walking feet in the
Mhm,
house, in the store. I need you to keep your hands in your pockets while we walk through the grocery store.
mhm.
I,
Sticks are not for banging on your
sticks
brother's
are
face.
exactly yes.
Sticks.
Sticks
I don't even know
belong
what
on the
sticks are for.
ground. Sticks
Yeah.
belong on the ground for the birds and the squirrels to use.
There we go. Yeah, that's what we do want.
Yes, yes.
Okay, another one. Yeah, and I this one makes me nervous because I can hear myself saying this. Like, "Don't talk like that," or "Watch your mouth." Like
Ah, yes.
I think of the back talk, and the response can be like, "Hey, don't talk like that."
Mhm.
Or
And
even
I
think
might
of our kids explore swear words. "Don't
oh,
talk like that."
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm. I need you to speak respectfully to me, and I will speak respectfully to you. If your child is younger, you might have to say, "I'm going to need you to use a nicer tone. I'm going to need you to use a quieter voice when you speak to me. I'm gonna need to make sure that you're not yelling at me when you talk to me."
Yes.
Those are the things that I might say. I might say, "Ooh, I would love it if you would say to mommy, 'Help, please.'"
Mm.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah.
What is it you want me to do?
Yes, and I think of the
Right.
story you tell about your, like, really when one of your oldest I think your oldest daughter was really young with her shoes
Oh,
that,
yes.
like, falling apart, and, it's like, "Help, please." Like,
Yes.
you can say, like, we can model I do that all I find
Yes.
myself doing it even to myself, like, "Thank you,
Ah,
mommy." Like,
thank you, mommy. Yes.
we, like, tell them what we like, "This would be an appropriate thing to say."
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Okay, and another one, and that sometimes we can be prone to, like, a little bit of that sarcasm or a
Mm,
joke or a sideways I say sideways sometimes, a sideways comment. It's
mhm.
like, "Well, say that," instead of being direct, but, like, "Better not miss curfew."
Yes. Or okay, so I there was definitely one that was tossed around in my home just last evening. Well, it's right where you left it.
Ah.
Okay, so back to better not miss curfew. I expect you in the door by 11. And see how clear that was? Like, that's not, "I
Mm,
expect you on the road by 11 headed towards home." It's, "I
yeah.
expect you in the door by 11."
Yes.
Yeah,
Mm.
those are fun.
Yes, so telling explicitly and it is, sometimes it's easier, like, "Well, I do want you to stop, like, I don't want you to hit. I don't want you to jump on the couch. I don't want you"
Mhm.
like, it's true that I don't want you to do that, but, like, what do I want you to do? I want you to jump on the trampoline. Like,
Yes.
I want you to be active outside rather than on the
Yes.
couch. Like,
Yes.
What do I want? What would be an appropriate behavior?
Mhm. Absolutely.
Got to flip those. Okay, and then there's one more thing that I feel like as we've been walking through this that we haven't quite touched or haven't quite cleared up. And it's this idea, I told you to hang on to that phrase in brackets of flexible but consistent.
Oh, yes. Okay, gotcha.
And so I feel like sometimes the go-to phrase is like we need balance, right? Like
Mhm.
we need a balance of flexibility and consistency. And it's like, okay, cool. How do I find that? But so that's my question is like, what tips do you have for parents on when it comes to rules? Like, when do I need consistency and flexibility? Or how do these coexist when they feel like opposites? So, do you have any tips? Do you have any tips for that?
Okay, so I had a vision in my head as you said that balance, and
Mm.
that was, that balance scale shifting back and forth, back and forth, and I think that that idea of it being perfectly stable and steady is just not that's not reality, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
I don't think there is a perfect steady answer when it comes to consistent and flexibility. And I'm going to use a phrase that our producer Mackenzie Young said as we were walking through this earlier, and she said, "You tap into your biological archives." And what I was saying was, what is that balance? I oftentimes use my gut. And
Mhm.
yes, I tap into my biological archives because something is telling me this doesn't feel right. Like adhering to this rule in a 100% rigid and consistent way in this particular situation doesn't feel right. I don't feel like I'm preserving the connection with
Mhm.
my child in this instance.
Yes.
And I did share this story about how my 16-year-old broke a rule, and her consequence was that she was going to miss this ritual birthday of a friend.
Yes.
And it didn't feel right to me, but I really struggled with how do I let her know that because she was late and didn't communicate, that was not appropriate, right?
Mhm.
But we had just come out of strict lockdown to a more open space in the pandemic, and this,
Yes.
friend's birthday, a 16th birthday, no
Yeah.
less, was a place where all of a sudden you could come out of quarantine and be with people and you didn't have to be socially distanced. And so my gut said, my biological archive said, "Laura, you got to renegotiate this." And
Mhm.
she'll still learn a lesson. So
Yeah.
we renegotiated her consequence. She got to go to the birthday party. Her friends actually were the ones that came up with the brand new consequences. And I'll tell you
Mhm.
what, she's not been late since. I get multiple texts throughout the night letting me know where she is and her expected arrival.
Yeah.
And I preserved a connection and a relationship with her in a positive way because I listened to my gut. And
Yes.
I didn't make the balance what is that thing? I don't know, it
The
wasn't
balance scale
yeah, it was
thing.
maybe tipping the balance scale thing was tipping more to one side than the other,
Yeah.
but look at what it got me in the end, so much more communication.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's important to recognize. So Kenzie brought that up because you're like, well, my advice is really kind of to trust your gut, but that's not scientific. And we're
Yes.
like, wait, your gut is scientific. Like
Yes.
your instinct, there's a part of your brain that knows, right? We're wired for
Mhm.
connection. We're wired for, these things. And it was like, wait, but even if
Yes.
your brain doesn't know, you like, yeah, she said, like, "There's file folders, and even if they're in
Yeah.
the archives." I was like, "Yes!"
Yes.
They're way back in the back of the library there, but oh, yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
That your gut knows.
It does.
Okay, so the thing is I think about, like, okay, flexibility, but consistency, flexibility, but consistency. So my thing is like, we talk about shifting circumstances and that we can renegotiate. But my thing is like we can renegotiate our expectations and rules to meet the current needs. And
Yes.
so I think that's where the flexibility piece comes in is like flexibility to our current needs or current circumstances. Or, yeah, our producer, full of good stuff today, also
Ooh.
said the thing about like sometimes what changes, the circumstance that changes is like better now. Like you've
Mhm.
learned more. I shared in one season, I've previously shared a story about when my daughter would come home from childcare and she'd want a snack. And some
Mm.
days I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I haven't even thought about what we're gonna have for supper. Have a snack." And other days, it's like, "We're minutes away. Just no, no, no
Mhm.
snack." And how I, like, realized, right? The thing that had changed was I realized, like, my kid is listening to her body that it's hungry.
Mhm.
So I can be flexible and that I can if yep, even if that supper is in 2 minutes, you can have a snack and you can even bring it to the table. Like,
Yes.
but so sometimes what changes is what know better, do
Mhm.
better. But as our circumstances change and our needs change, we can have flexibility there. But we can have consistency in enforcing is almost like too strong of a word that I'm thinking of. But like the way we communicate those expectations and the way that we do what we say we're going to do.
Yes.
So if I say
Mhm.
like, "You know what? This is the rule for right now. We're going to revisit this in a month." So for this month, this is the expectation. I can be consistent in that. And then I can be flexible and renegotiate it in a month if it's not working.
Absolutely.
Um, and so I think that balance comes in flexibility and renegotiating, consistency and like enforcement and communication. And then also knowing which rules and expectations are non-negotiable for you.
Right.
And some of those things they can be based on past experiences, they can be based on family values. Like there's a whole host of things that what your non-negotiables are and what mine are.
Mhm.
But we can say, like, you know what? There is room to renegotiate this when our circumstances change. Or, you know what? This one's sticking. The You're in charge of your body and they're in charge of their body rule in our house ain't going nowhere.
Yes. I love that.
Okay, so now I think that brings us to stop, breathe, talk, Lori.
Okay, okay. So at this point in our episodes, we typically bring in our producer, Mackenzie DeYoung, and she's still hanging out in the background there. But during season 6, we knew that our writer, Barb Dunn Swanson, has a passion for all things about resilience. And so we've been asking her to come in to our episodes. And what happens typically is she gets on the screen and I look at her and I say, "Hey, Barb, what are you thinking?"
What a good episode. Oh my goodness. I want to unpack so many great ideas based on what you've already shared. And the first one is that rules are a protective factor
Oof.
Mm,
Yes.
yes.
at their foundation, they are a protective factor. And if you think about being an adult and following rules for driving or how to play soccer, rules for playing any of those board games we grew up playing.
Mm,
Rules are foundational. And so, what we know is that sometimes the rule is created so that we stay safe.
Mhm.
mhm,
Maybe the rules created to help us save resources or save money.
mhm.
You talked, Lori, about your daughter having that job because maybe she wants to take the car and she's going to have to buy some gas, right?
Yes.
And then you renegotiated.
Mhm.
So sometimes we're helping kids learn the value of saving money, and so we have a rule around something like that.
Yeah.
So you both have been talking about the value and the benefit of rules for families, but the bottom line for me, as I think about rules and getting our kids to the stage where they're launched, is what's the bottom line? And the bottom line is self discipline, isn't it?
Mm.
Mm,
If
yeah. So true.
I have the
That's great.
self-discipline to f yeah, if I have the self-discipline to follow the rule as I'm
Mhm.
growing up and I'm watching my parents, and I'm listening for the communication that they give around what a rule means and what it's about, then I'm gonna be more likely to be able to follow rules as I get older and I go to school, and
Yes.
Yes.
then I go to high school, and then I go to college, because from here on out, we gotta face it, rules are everywhere,
They are.
right?
Yes.
So,
Mm,
that's what I'm thinking about, all those kinds of things, but the bottom line for
yeah.
me, those rules are protective factors to keep me safe, maybe even to keep me healthy, to help me save money,
Mhm.
but, rules are good. Rules are okay.
They are.
Yes. Yes, we can have those expectations, keep our kids
Yes.
safe, all that.
You
Mm,
talked about the ages too, because you know what? We don't need rules that are, for older kids applied to younger kids. We have to be realistic in what those rules look like, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you talked a lot about that. So that's another really important piece that, you just got to be thinking about ages and stages. Where are your children developmentally? And then apply those rules in meaningful ways so that they can comprehend what we're talking about. Going back to those C's, we're still continuing to make a connection with our kids, but
Yes.
but we're communicating why we're making the connection and why we put these rules into place. So
Yes, we
Oh,
are.
yeah.
those are the things I'm thinking about today.
Yes. I would say, and those 7 C's, yeah, we didn't really touch on them yet. That, like, as we think about rules and how they contribute to resilience, and our 7 C's of resilience, which are competence, confidence, connection, character, contribution, coping, control. Those 7 C's that help build resilience in our kids and us. Rules are a part of, right?
Mhm.
It's a part of how they build their character, like you said. Like,
Yes.
that these are things I believe, this is how I contribute to the world.
Yes.
This is like, yeah, well, I guess contribute is a different C, but, their character and their integrity, their moral values, that is associated with our family rules. And
They
then, yeah,
are.
that contribution, when we allow them to negotiate and renegotiate with us, like,
Mhm.
"You know what? I know my curfew has always been this time," or, "I know this has always been the expectation. I'm wondering if we could change it." Like, having a space where our kids can renegotiate also gives them that sense of, I can contribute. Like, I
Absolutely.
have ideas, I am competent, like, yeah, all good.
Absolutely.
You're right.
Love it.
Those rules help us raise good kids.
They do.
Yes.
And there's
Mhm.
more than one way to raise great kids.
Yes. More
Yay.
than one way, for
Thankfully,
sure.
thankfully,
Yes.
without shame and without judgment, there are more
Mhm.
than one way, right?
Mm.
More than one way.
Yes.
Well, thanks for your thinking.
Yes,
You're
we love your
welcome.
thinking.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Love having Barb come in. And you know what? We get to have her again next week when we talk about repairing.
Mhm.
So you heard us say in this episode something about being warm every time, or being consistent, or being these things. And it's like, okay, sometimes it's hard to be those things.
It is.
So what do we do when inevitably we don't do what we intended? And so
Exactly.
repair is our R for building resilience next week. But again, we'll talk about that next week. So,
We
but
will.
for today, we got to talk about rules.
We did. We did. And the
Yes.
rules, ideally understanding that rules are super important and they're also renegotiable.
All right, that sums it up. I don't need to say anything. You got it.
All right. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today on the Science of Parenting podcast. Remember to subscribe to our weekly audio podcast on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Watch the show on video each week and join us on Facebook and Twitter to see our content in your feed.
You sure can. So please do come along with us as we tackle the ups and downs, the ins and outs, and the research and reality all around the science of parenting.
The Science of Parenting is hosted by Lori Cohosts and Mackenzie Johnson, produced by Mackenzie DeYoung, with research and writing by Barbara Dunn Swanson. Send in questions and comments to parenting@iastate.edu and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. For the full non-discrimination statement or accommodation inquiries, go to www.extension.iastate.edu/diversity/ext.